Hi guys, welcome back. So I'm going to be continuing the collection view tutorial. And last time I covered collection view basics and custom cell classes. So if you haven't watched the first part of this series, please do. Today I'm going to be covering interactive cells, insertion, deletion, and reloading with collection views. So let's go back to the code that we wrote in the first part of this tutorial. And what I mean by interactive cells is, if the user taps on the cell in some way, or interacts with it, we want something to happen. So there's different levels of interaction that we can build in, and let's first try out the most basic type. Let's say if the user taps on a cell that I want the cell's row number to be printed. The way that I can do that is by using one of the delegate methods called didSelectItem@indexPath. So you see that we're getting this index path argument again here. So what we can do is we can print indexPath.row to the console. So without moving further, let's go ahead and try this out in the sim. So now you'll see that if I tap on the first cell right here, it'll print 0, and the next one it'll print 1, and 2, and 3, and accordingly, on and on. So, okay, we built in some basic interactive functionality, but what if we want to do more? What if we want to have a button on a cell and, for example, change that button's color when the button is tapped, not the cell? In order to do that, we need to use protocols and delegates. So before we do that, let's comment out this code right here. And let's also write a comment for what it does exactly. So if we want something to happen when the user taps a cell, then use this method. And let's add some quick comments to some of the methods that we wrote last time so that it's a quick refresher for you guys as well. So this method, if you recall, it basically sets the size of the cell. So cell for item at index path, we use this method to dequeue the cell and set it up, and then we'll display cell method. We use this method to populate the data of a given cell. Okay, so next thing that we want to do is we want to build in a little bit more of interactive functionality, and we'll do this using a button. So let's go to our food collection view cell class, and we're just going to add in a basic button here. So I'm not going to be too descriptive in the naming. I'm just going to call it var button, and it'll have type UI button. And let's go ahead and instantiate that. So we'll say UI button. We'll give it a frame. Let's say I just want it to, let's say I just wanted to be sort of in the center of the cell, and I want it to have width, let's say 200. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say content view dot frame dot width minus 200 divided by 2 to get the x position. So I'm just trying to center it here, and let's say the width is 200 then, and let's say the height is like 40. So then we can do content view dot frame dot height minus 40 divided by 2 to get the starting y position. Awesome. To start off with, let's set the button's background color to be green. So UIColor.green. And let's set its title as well, and we'll just call it, change my color. Normal. And just to make it look a little nicer, we might as well give it a corner radius, maybe of 3, and we'll clip it to bounds. Clip to bounds. And then we'll add it to the content view to add subview button. Okay. Now, when this button is clicked, we want a certain method to be called, right? So let's write that method right here, and we'll call it func change color. But let's say we want the color to be changed not from within this cell class. We want the view controller to actually do it. So we're going to be using a delegate for that. But before we do that, let's add this change color method as a target of this button. So we'll say button.addTarget self, and the action will be change color state.touchup inside. And basically what that's saying is that when we tap on this button, this change color method is going to get called. And let's just print out to the console for right now, changing color. But it won't actually change the color yet. So let's just see how this looks in our sim before we move forward. So when I tap this, changing color, okay, so this method's getting called whenever I tap one of these buttons. Now, let's say that I want to, as soon as this method is called, I want to call a method in the view controller class. That's a little hard to do without protocols, so let's make a protocol. So we'll say protocol food collection view cell delegate, and we'll have a required function called func change color of cell. Or sorry, it's change color of button. And pardon my naming of methods right now. I know this naming isn't particularly great, but you get the gist. So func change color of button for, and we'll say for cell, and we'll pass in a cell to this. So we could pass in any type of argument. I'm just giving this one as an example. So now what we want to do is we want to add a variable here called var delegate, and we want to set it to have type food collection view cell delegate, and for right now we'll set it to no. So when this change color method is called, we want to call that the delegates method. So delegate dot change color of button for cell, and the cell we want to change it for is self, the current cell. So now let's go into our view controller, and what we want to make sure to do is set the cells delegate. So that's part of our setup. So after the cell is awoken from mib, we'll say cell.delegate equals self. And now that this view controller is supposed to conform to that delegate, we actually have to write that in, and we'll write it as another extension. So we'll say extension view controller and food collection view cell delegate, and now you'll see that that method autofills when we type change color button right there. So in this method, all we need to do is we want to take the cell that we have, that we've called for cell, and we want to get its button, and we want to change its background color to something else. So we could change it to blue, for example. Okay, so now that we've written that, let's give it a try and see if everything works. So if I press change my color, would you look at that? It's changing the color to blue. So our code's working. Now let's make sure we understand this, because I know this is a lot to pick up when you're learning this for the first time. So if you don't know protocols and delegates, then I would highly suggest looking that up in Apple's documentation before trying to really run through this code. But essentially, we've created a protocol to sort of communicate between the cell and the view controller. So if you want the user to interact with a certain element in a cell, like a button, and as a result, something to happen in the view controller, then you basically create a delegate, and you have you have to set that delegate of the cell in self-item index path, and you're saying that the cell's delegate is self. So basically what that's saying now is that whenever the delegate.changeColor button is called, the delegate in this case is the view controller, so the method specified right here in the view controller is going to get called. So that's a lot to take in, and if you don't understand it, I'd highly recommend looking through some of the Apple docs for protocols and delegates. But awesome, we built in some more interactive functionality into our collection view. So let's move forward. Alright, so let's go back to the keynote, and let me covering insertion, deletion, and reloading with collection views. So we're going to cover insertion and reloading sort of hand in hand. So let's consider a scenario where we write a function called add more images, and let's say we cut out the last 5 images in this array right here, and we create a more images array that contains those. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're starting with this images array with only 5 images, and we're setting up the collection view, and then afterwards we're going to call add more images to add more images to our collection view. So think about when this could be useful. This could be especially useful with databases. So when you're retrieving data from a database and you're adding that in to your collection view, you're going to need to call a method similar to this. So let's practice that, even though we don't have a database set up. So first thing that we need to do is we need to update our data source, which is images. So we'll do images.append contents of more images. And we're actually not mutating more images, so we can change this var to a let. Next thing that we want to do is let's first try out reloading. So what we can do is collectionView.reload data, and let's try and run that. Now this is the easiest solution in this case, but it's not the best solution, and we'll go over the best solution in just a minute. So let's count the images here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome. So basically what's happening, and it's happening too fast for us to really tell right now, but we're setting up the collection view with 5 images in it originally, and then we're adding in more images with this add more images method. And once we've appended these images to our main data source, which is images, then we're reloading the data of the collection view. Now when could this be problematic? Consider when you're getting data from a database every second, or maybe every couple of seconds. Essentially, you would be calling collectionView.reload data many times, and that can be an issue because at that point the screen might start flashing. Reason being, you're basically reloading the data of the entire collection view, but that's inefficient. You don't need to do that. All you need to do is insert data into the collection view. You don't need to reload the cells that are already there. So collectionView.reload data can be very useful in some cases, but here's the better way to go about this problem. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to say collectionView.perform batch updates, and we use this whenever we want to perform multiple updates to a collection view at a time. Let's fill this in, and we don't have a completion, and this is an optional, so we can just pass in nil as a completion here. So inside this closure right here, we're going to insert data into our collection view. So we're performing batch updates within this closure. So we'll say collectionView.insert items. Now it's asking us for the index paths of those items. Recall from last video that index path stores information about both the row number of the item as well as the section number. So we need to find that. And we want to add in self here because it's in a closure. So the way we find that is basically by iterating over the more images array. And now that we've added all these images to the images array, we want to find their index in the images array, because their index in the images array will be their index in the collection view. So let's say for image in more images, and let's say let index equal images.index, and the syntax for this is as follows, in case you don't know it. And that'll basically give us the index of image inside the array images. So next thing, let's construct an index path out of it. Let index path equal index path. And one cool thing is, earlier they only used to have NS index path, and now they've added index path in Swift 3. So the item number will be basically the row number, so that's the index. And the section, we only have one section, so it'll be 0. Section number 0. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in, and we have to unwrap this, by the way, over here. So we're going to say index paths. So we're going to say index paths.append index path. So we're adding this index path for this image into the index paths array. But we haven't created an index paths array, so let's do that real quick. We'll say var index paths equals an array of index path. Okay. Cool. So now we can pass that array in over here, and we'll know just where to insert cells into the collection view. Now, I almost guarantee you this is going to crash, and we'll see just why. Okay, it crashed, and we're diving into some more advanced collection view stuff here, but basically there's an intricacy to this. So if you look over here in the error message, let's see what it says. It says invalid update to the number of items. So it says the number of items contained in the existing section after the update, 10, must be equal to the number of items contained in the section before the update, 10, plus or minus the number of items inserted or deleted, which is 5. So the issue here is that when we're calling CollectionView.perform batch updates, inside, basically, Swift is calling number of items in section once, and then it's calling it at the end, and it's double checking that the values match up. So let's think what could be happening. So before we call CollectionView.perform batch updates, the length of the images array, so images.count, is 10 because we've added in these 5 new images already. Afterwards, we're inserting 5 items, and when it checks later, it's still 10. And it's expecting that it should be 15 because we've added 5 items, but really we only want it to be 10. So what's the way to sort of fix this? It's simple. We'll go to the top and we'll make a class variable called numimages, and we'll start it as 5 because that's the length of the images array to start with. And over here, instead of returning images.count, we're going to return numimages instead. Now what we're going to do here is we're only going to increment numimages with the number of new images that we've added once we've inserted the items. So now let's think about what's happening. We're saying CollectionView.perform batch updates, then it's checking over here in number of items in section, and numimages is still 5 because we've added the new images into the more images array, but numimages is still 5 from before. Then once we've inserted items into the collection view, we've inserted 5. So now it's expecting that, okay, so I checked first, and the numimages was 5, so now numimages should be 10. So now that we're adding self.numimages plus equals 5, once this update is complete, so once the code inside here is complete, it's going to expect 10, and that's exactly what it gets. So let's try running this. And what do you know? It works. So we have all 10 images right there. Awesome. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to explore deleting items. So let's write a function called func delete last image. And let's say we just want to remove the last row in our collection view. So what we'll do in this case is we'll say CollectionView.perform batch updates, and we'll say self.collectionView dot delete items, and it's going to ask which items we're deleting. And real quick, let's calculate the index paths above. So we'll say var index paths equals array of index paths, and we're basically gonna append the last index path to this. So index paths dot append index path for item. Let's think what the item number should be in this case. It should be basically images dot count minus 1. because images.count is 10, and the index accordingly would be 9. So, and it'll still be in section 0. So then, right here, we're going to pass in index paths. And what are we not going to forget to do? We're not going to forget to decrement num images. Awesome. So now, oh sorry, there's a quick fix there. Delete item at index. Yes, I didn't mean index paths. Thank you, Swift Compile. Okay, now what we're going to do is after add images, we're going to call delete last image. And let's see if instead of 10, there's 9 images. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Awesome. So let's take a look at all the things that we've done in this tutorial. We built off the code from last tutorial, and we learned how to reload the data of a collection view. We learned how to insert more data, and we learned how to delete data from a collection view. Along with that, we also learned about interactive cells. And basically, we dived into some more advanced stuff, which, it may be a little difficult for you the first time you're doing collection views. But essentially, the really, really essential stuff that you need to know about collection views is in the first video. So just to outline what all that is, it's setting up your collection view, registering a cell class, creating a custom cell class, and then implementing all these delegate methods right here. So hope that was pretty insightful for learning about collection views, and thanks for watching.